This happened 6 years ago when I was studying abroad in Ireland. Studying abroad was the best experience of my life, but I could have done without the following scary experience on a weekend trip to Berlin. I was planning trips for most weekends, mainly in Ireland, and a few in other European countries because it was so cheap to travel from country to country. A friend of mine from high school was living in Germany at the time, and we decided to visit Berlin one weekend because neither of us had been there before. We stayed at a Marriott hotel and the hotel staff was great. We planned to go to a concert and take a long walking tour of the city on Saturday. We both arrived on a Friday and were leaving Sunday morning. So on Friday evening, we both arrived and decided to go get some food. We walked a couple of blocks. It wasn't late, maybe 5 or 6 p.m., and found a restaurant, probably part of a chain, but it was good. We were having fun, chatting, catching up, eating, and we both had a glass of wine. After dinner, we started walking back toward our hotel when, all of a sudden, this guy started talking at us in German. He wasn't unattractive, but I certainly couldn't pick him out of a crowd. He was tall, had dark hair, and was dressed in jeans, nice sneakers, a t-shirt, and a black track jacket. We apologized and said we didn't speak German and that we spoke English. He immediately switched gears and started speaking in English. At first I thought he was just being a typical guy, hitting on 2 girls on a Friday night. He asked us what sights we had seen so far in Berlin, and where we were going. We were American, so we were clearly from out of town. We told him we had just arrived and were heading back to our hotel. I did not tell him the name of our hotel, as I was starting to get weird vibes. He asked which hotel we were staying at and if we wanted a ride. I refused to tell him. My stomach was flip-flopping as I tried to figure this guy out. Had he been watching us have dinner? Did he know we had a glass of wine? Or did he think we were easy because we were clearly foreigners? I had a bad feeling about all of it, and was extremely suspicious. He demanded that we come with him to see the Brandenburg Gate because it was best at night. I said no, and my friend said no, and we told him to have a good night. He tried saying other landmarks and sights, but we were firm and I wanted to get away from him and off the street. We tried to walk away and he kept following us. We had gone less than a block. He kept running in front of us, blocking our path, talking to us, and occasionally trying to grab our arms. I started to freak out and I was looking for the closest store or shop to duck into. And I saw a little coffee shop across the street. We crossed the street and right before we were going to go inside, this guy managed to grab my friend's arms and wrists and said that we shouldn't go in because the night is young or some crap. He tried grabbing me too, but I wouldn't let myself be close enough to him. He refused to come inside the shop, saying that we needed to stay out, rattling off places we should go. I knew our best bet was to go in the shop and off the street. I had such a bad feeling being out on the street, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Somehow my friend got out of his grip and we booked it into the coffee shop. I was shaking at this point and my friend was crying. There was this cute teenage girl at the counter. I couldn't remember how to politely ask if she spoke English and German, so I just blurted out, "English." She was so kind. She said, "Of course." I told her everything. Her eyes went wide and she called the police and she gave us free drinks to calm us down. Meanwhile, we were sitting inside the store drinking our drinks and knowing we were safe. This guy was pacing outside the store, clearly waiting for us to leave. He kept talking to someone on the phone and looking at us through the windows. Then, less than 5 minutes after we ducked into the shop, a plain black sedan pulled up next to a bus stop on the corner outside the shop. He got in and the car drove away. Unfortunately, the license plate was obscured, so none of us could tell the police any useful information. I don't know if we had stayed on the street whether we would have ended up in that car or not, or if he called someone after the fact. It makes me sick to think about. So, dude who tried to kidnap me and my friend and likely traffic us, let's not meet again. This happened 2 years ago when I was 19 years old. I'm a traveler at heart and love trying new things. I was in China for 2 weeks with a tourist group of about 12 people. I didn't know most of them, they were all from America. I knew one guy who happened to be my kung fu instructor, or as I should say, my sifu. Sifu means teacher in Chinese. He was about 37 years old. His dad was very old and lived in China. He's a very popular man in his town and teaches the local police force and sometimes even the military. So let's get past these introductions and on to the story. Literally a day before we left China, we visited a clothing shop owned by someone our friend knew. We went there and all got free clothing and discounts. I took off my jacket, which had my wallet and passport, and put it on a hanger. I tried on some clothes to take a picture with my group and then went back inside. I put on my jacket again and then we headed to lunch in our convoy that my instructor's dad set up for us. I ate my food and noticed something. I started patting down my pants, my jacket pockets, and looking around my seat. Someone asked if everything was okay, and I calmly said, "I think I lost my wallet. Maybe it's in the convoy car." But it wasn't there. After a few hours, we finally heard back from the store. They had checked the surveillance tape and called us. What I saw gave me a slight feeling of anger and the creeps. 2 very well-dressed men were in the store by themselves, just standing there with no physical interest in any clothing. One man was standing near the door, sort of blocking anyone from coming back in to see the other man. The other man quickly went into my pocket, but no one else's pockets or belongings. They just went straight for my stuff. That's what gave me the creeps. I enjoyed the last day of my trip, literally walking all over the place trying to find that guy again with his picture in hand. But nothing. The next day, my tourist group left, and I was forced to stay behind because I had no exit visa or passport. They all gave me a few hundred yen and wished me luck in China as they went into the airport. I went back with my instructor's family and decided to stay one more night in my fancy hotel before taking my invitation to their home. It was late at night and I was in the hotel lobby room, which had huge front glass doors facing a main street. I looked outside and saw the guy from the store who had stolen my stuff drive past and look at me. The next day, my instructor's brother, who was an ex-detective with a good but very limited understanding of English, took me to the police department to file the theft report. I know, it took us too long to report it. Soon I became a suspect for staying in China past my visa. I was at the department for hours getting my fingerprints checked and my mugshots taken. Eventually they let me leave. I went to the US Embassy and got an emergency passport. I got my exit visa in queue, but I was told to wait 2 weeks before it was eligible and accessible. I figured that was too long and I didn't want to hassle my new friends, so I ended up getting an inexpensive hotel room. By US standards, this hotel could easily have been $100 a night in a state like New York or California. In China, the currency is very different. I only spent $21 a night for HD TV, new bed sheets, a huge shower room, and $1 breakfast. It took me a few minutes to get used to the Chinese digital cable. I went out and got a new wallet with all the money my tourist mates had given me before they left. I also went shopping at a vitamin shop and got a discount card, which will come in handy later. You'll see why. If you've made it this far into the story, this is where the sketchy part happens. It was late at night and one of the friends I met in China knew I wanted a tattoo. He told me about this cool spot to get inked up. He also told me to never go there without him. So what do? I go without him. This place was in an alley and looked very similar to a shopping center, but much smaller. It was 2 floors off a decently busy street and had a lucrative look to it. The next day I went around early evening. It was only lightly raining. I entered the building, which had a lobby, and was greeted by a man in a suit with an earpiece. Keep in mind I was in mainland China and this man didn't know any English and I barely knew any Chinese. He looked at me and pointed toward the front door. I insisted on staying and said, No, tattoo, while shaking my head. I showed him my drawing and he said something in Chinese with a look of satisfaction on his face. Then he led me upstairs. I was finally led down a narrow hall with other doors into a tattoo parlor room. This room had about 5 people, including a lady with a tattoo gun. I sat down on a sofa to wait my turn. Thankfully, the lady spoke a little English, and we had a decent conversation. I told her my situation. As I sat in her chair ready to get inked with my button-up shirt off and my short-sleeve white t-shirt rolled up, 5 men in mostly dirty suits walked into the room. They told everyone something in Chinese, and they all left except one, who made a stopping gesture with his hand and asked me to stay. Instantly, I knew something was up. I played it cool, folded my tattoo sketch, put it in my pocket, slowly put on my button-up shirt and sat on the waiting sofa, which faced the front door. One of them blocked the doorway, one was to my left, and 3 stood in front of me in a half circle. One had a mean-looking tattoo on his neck and was decently built for someone shorter than average. They all stood close to me with aggressive body language. Keep in mind, I am 6'4" and lean, weighing 220 pounds. These guys were at most maybe 5'11". The rest were shorter. They pulled out their phones with the translator app. They started asking me for all my money, where I was staying, and so on. One of them told me through the app, which I had to read, to give them all my money or else, or something along those lines. I pulled out my wallet and they snatched all my cash. They still hovered over me like bullies scolding a victim on the playground, obviously trying to intimidate me. They spotted the corner of my discount membership card and told me to give it to them. I used this moment to ask the man for his phone app, pretending to agree with them, which he had put in his pocket. There was a weird, brief moment of intense silence as they stood over me like they were planning to jump on me any second. They showed no signs of letting me leave. As soon as the guy looked down to grab his phone, my heart rushed. I got tunnel vision, jumped up and tackled through them and out the front door. I felt one of them try to grab my shirt, but I used my elbow and shook him off as I hit him. The guy at the door fell into the wall behind him. I sprinted down the hallway and heard people yelling in Chinese behind me as they chased me. Down the hallway, I saw double-handled doors chained and locked. Next to the doors was a fire escape. I went out the window onto the fire escape on the 2nd floor, climbed down the ladder and reached the ground. I sprinted down the alley and almost slipped in a few puddles, but eventually made it to the main street. I went to some nearby public markets and had no money on me, so I stole a new hat, shirt, and umbrella. I wanted to look as different as possible. I ended up walking around that evening to make sure I wasn't followed. As I walked around, lots of people asked me for a photo. I am 6'4", dark-skinned and had dreadlocks, a mixture you just don't see in mainland China. So I charged them 5 yuan for a photo. Eventually, I had a decent amount of cash, so I took a taxi back to the train station, got back to my hotel room, took a shower, went to my friend's house for dinner, and told them the story. During dinner, my friend told me that was a triad hangout, and that I could have easily been drugged and kidnapped. I was in the town of Foshan, China. This event happened in another nearby town. Creepy triad thugs, let's not meet again. I've had some weird encounters in my life. I've been robbed and mugged. I've also been creepily followed by a guy who asked me if I believed in angels. I can share that story if you want. But if I had to pick just one, this one certainly takes the cake. Let's go back to 2005. I was 20 years old at the time, young and foolish. I decided to move to Mexico City alone to try and make it as an artist. Between 2005 and 2009, crime really escalated in my country, especially drug-related crime, kidnapping and muggings. I took a job at a call center to pay my expenses while I studied. I was breaking even, but the hours were flexible, which allowed me to study part-time. I usually left downtown where I worked around 10 or 11 p.m. most days. One night, I was extremely tired and decided to board the first taxi I saw. It seemed official enough, so after checking it out a bit, I got in. But once I was inside, something just felt off. You know how sometimes you just get this weird feeling in your stomach that something isn't right, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That's exactly what I felt. Unfortunately, I didn't get out. Not 10 minutes had passed when the driver suddenly slowed down and came to a complete stop in the middle of a dark road. He didn't say a word. I was sitting almost in the middle of the back seat when I heard the right doors open. Two men got in, one in the front and one in the back, pushing me to the side until I was right behind the driver. Time seemed to freeze for a minute that felt like forever. Even though my life didn't flash before my eyes in a traditional way, I could only think about my parents. I wondered if this was how I was going to die. Then the man next to me spoke. "Keep your eyes closed. We are not robbers or kidnappers." Great, I thought. Scout's honor. Then he told me a slightly elaborate but completely ridiculous story about why they got into my taxi. "We are running away from the car behind us. You can open your eyes for a second and see. Do you see? Just stay still and it will be over soon. We're not bad people. We'll drop you near your home. We just need help." Even though I was sure the taxi driver was part of the scheme, they verbally mistreated him and told him to shut up and keep driving, though he stayed calm and silent the whole way. The guy next to me then contradicted himself hilariously when he started searching my backpack. He also did a body search and checked my pockets. He took out my wallet and called me by name. I never knew I could hate the sound of my own name that much. He kept searching, so I raised my hands to show him I had nothing else. The guy in the front seat was a different story. He sounded jumpy and agitated, maybe on drugs. I wasn't crying, screaming, or making noise. When I raised my hands, he yelled unnecessarily, "Keep your hands down, bitch." What, you think I'm about to karate chop all three of you and jump out of a moving car? I thought. The guy next to me sensed the tension and said, "So, just try to remain calm. I'm sorry, you seem cool, but things are hard. In any other circumstance, we would be friends." I almost chuckled. "I don't condone your lifestyle, but I don't judge," I said. But as he kept my belongings, including my old LG cell phone, I couldn't help but think how ironic it was that my new best buddy couldn't just ask for my number while stealing my phone. More time passed. The guy in the front seat was now in possession of my debit card. How do I know? Because he yelled, "Tell us your PIN code and give us the right one, or I will hurt you, whore." I don't know what came over me, but I said, "Don't talk to me like that." It baffles me that, in a moment of extreme danger, when my life was literally on the line, the thing that bothered me most was someone being rude. Hey, you can be a killer or a robber but have manners. Yeah, don't talk to her like that, the guy next to me said. While they were now playing good cop, bad cop, I gave them my PIN code. The jumpy guy got out of the car and withdrew the money. It wasn't much, but hey, I worked hard for it, so it still sucked. In express kidnapping cases, they usually drive you around for hours until midnight, when it's time to get the rest of the money on your cards. I didn't have much to begin with, so thankfully they seemed to be ready to drop me off. I knew they weren't going to kindly drop me near my place, which scared me since they had my wallet. But these human diapers actually dropped me on the opposite side of the city, almost 2 hours away. They gave me back my empty backpack, opened the door, and told me to slowly walk away without looking back. I kept walking until I knew the car was far away. Then I sat on the floor in a dark park and started crying, mostly because I was relieved. Next came the part where I had to get back to my apartment without money, cards, or a phone. The only thing I could think of was jumping in front of a police car in the middle of a busy avenue. They stopped. One of the officers looked aloof and fed up like, "Oh, another girl that was robbed, hooray." Thankfully, the other police officer offered to switch to his personal car and drive me back home. As I was clearly in shock, he kept trying to make polite conversation about my hometown and what I did for a living. He even offered me some money, but I declined. I was truly thankful for what he did. I regret not asking for his number afterward so I could bake him cookies or something. I just really hope he continues to have the amazing life he deserves. Total time kidnapped about 3 to 4 hours, but it felt like so much longer. I decided to move to a new city afterward. That new city became extremely violent because of the drug war in 2007. But hey, even though I saw a couple of hangings and blood on the streets, I finished college without being kidnapped again, so I'll call that a win. This happened when I was a freshman in college around 2005. The Mexican border was considered sketchy at the time, but I had heard that it was safe to go to Progreso as opposed to places like Juarez. At the time, I went to college in Corpus Christi, Texas. I was about 19 and decided to drive 3 hours to Mexico with my guy roommate Ryan, who was the same age, and our girlfriends on a Sunday night. We wanted to eat real Mexican food, get some beers, explore, and whatever else you might do in Mexico. Probably a terrible idea. We were both clean-cut, generic-looking white dudes with 18-year-old blonde girlfriends. Basically, we stuck out like a sore thumb in Mexico. When we all arrived at the border crossing in Progreso, there was a parking lot where you could park and walk across the border. At the time, you didn't need a passport. You could just show your driver's license and walk across. As we were talking to the border agent and showing our IDs, he gave us a very concerned, stern look, the way a parent would look at their children knowing they were about to make a stupid decision. Very seriously, he asked us what we planned to do. After we told him, he just paused and said, "Please be very, very careful." I felt a tinge in my stomach but brushed it off and kept walking across the large metal bridge that was illuminated by high-powered lamps. As soon as we crossed the border, it was a totally different world. The streets were dirty, not paved, and not well lit. People were loitering around in corners and shadows, selling things on the street and so on. We walked about 100 yards in and were immediately greeted by some stranger on the street. The man was in his late 30s, muscular, stocky, with a heavy Spanish accent, but could speak broken English. He was very chatty and wanted to be our new best friend. He claimed he knew the best restaurants, the best bars, and could show us a good time. I was immediately creeped out by this guy, but nobody else in our group was getting bad vibes at this point. He just seemed overly friendly and very eager to help us. This kind of behavior sets off alarm bells when I travel now. He followed our group to a local restaurant where we all sat down to order. As we ate, he talked a lot and began to dominate the conversation. He was very overbearing and became more insistent on showing us around and started trying to make plans for what we should do that evening. Everyone in the group was starting to get uncomfortable. He got up to go to the restroom after we paid. When he left the table, I told Ryan and the girls I thought we needed to lose this guy, and everyone agreed at this point. While our new best friend was in the restroom, I was thinking this was our perfect opportunity to duck out unnoticed. Then the waitress came over and, in a hushed voice with broken English, she pointed to the bathroom and said, "That man, no good man, muy malo, no good man." Now everybody was freaked out. We had already paid, so we all got up in a rush to leave so we could ditch this guy. As we were walking out the door, he came out of the bathroom and ran out to catch up with us. At this point, his demeanor changed dramatically. He was no longer laughing or joking or in a good mood at all. He seemed genuinely irritated that we tried to ditch him. Now he was very insistent that we follow him to the best bar in town. I don't know why, but we were all scared, so we trailed behind him down this main street looking at each other like, what the heck should we do? Periodically, he would run to the other side of the street and mutter something to the Mexican police in Spanish. These guys had shirts that said, Policia, but they were wearing baggy clothes with pistols tucked in their waistlines, smoking cigarettes on the street corner. They definitely did not look like legit cops, and we were all starting to feel like this was going from bad to worse. By this time, everybody on the street just stopped and stared at us as we walked by. Everything about the situation just felt so wrong. Then this guy pulled out a cigarette and started smoking it, except it was not lit. He continued to smoke it without lighting it. What the heck? I felt like the leader of our friend group because this guy was mostly conversing with me while Ryan and the girls had become quiet and were just sort of following me, not really knowing what to do. I was mentally keeping track of how far we had walked from the border crossing. I kept looking back and saw the lights from the bridge getting smaller and smaller. The final straw was when we got to a side street that led to an empty parking lot. In the parking lot, I could see a van parked by itself. He insisted this bar was just a little farther down the side street. I could feel my heart start pounding and my face flushing. I snapped and said, hell no, we weren't going any farther and we were going back to the US. I looked at my friends and told them to start walking back towards the lights. We started walking away with this guy getting visibly more angry by the second. We all started to pick up the pace until we were just sprinting towards the border bridge. This guy was following us and screaming until we got back to the bridge. He sort of fell back and then just disappeared into the streets again. I think once we got close enough to the border agents, he just gave up following us. We had only been there a total of maybe 2 hours, but I'd had my fill of Mexico fun. We were so glad to be back in the United States driving home. In the car on the way back, everybody was kind of giddy with nervous laughter as it kind of sank in that we narrowly dodged getting abducted in Mexico. I was a new manager of a very old building. I came from social work and was hired to manage a building that was about to celebrate its 100th anniversary. My office was in the basement along with several below-ground apartments. One of these apartments belonged to an elderly fellow who I knew was on palliative care for extreme kidney failure. He would get medication and food delivered every other week, so when it wasn't brought in, I rang him. When I got no answer, I asked the police for a welfare check. This was a very warm June, and the way the building was constructed, you couldn't smell something wafting out of an apartment unless the door was opened and allowed the smell out. Once the police opened the door, everyone knew that he had been dead for a while. The smell permeated everything. The smell of rotten human got into the air ducts, and it's not something you forget. Fast forward 1 month to July. Now mind you, there are 105 tenants in this 4-story building, and I got a call from one tenant's niece saying she hadn't heard from her uncle in a while and could we please check on him. Of course, I knew this guy. I thought I'd just pop up and make sure he was okay. Maybe have a laugh. No answer. I called the police for a welfare check. It had been a regular 85 degrees Fahrenheit outside for a few weeks, and yes, he had passed away. The smell. The smell of a dead human is so much different than the smell of dead other things. It's a sticky, sweet smell, combined with an acrid taste and a heavy, I don't know how to describe it, dead meat mushroom sort of smell. It doesn't smell like other rotten meat. The medical examiner joked that I had staged this just to see him again. The smell was so bad in the hallway just from opening the door for the few minutes it took to take the body out that I had entire families running from the building in tears. I knew I had to mitigate this. I knew he had passed on a small carpet in the middle of the room, so I put some menthol under my nostrils, double-gloved, wrapped my pant legs, and pulled up the carpet, which was pretty thick with adipose tissue. I had told the coroner what I was going to do before I did it. I slipped in his goo. I double-bagged his carpet and opened the windows. It's still rough to think about. It involved large fans and my staying up all night. Cut to 1 month later. I was putting notices on doors for an upcoming bedbug inspection. I smelled that smell on the 4th floor. That acrid dead smell. Someone was dead. There was no mistaking it. I started knocking on doors, but only 1 out of 25 answered because it was the middle of the day. I can't just go into apartments. I call the police, they come out, and they confirm it's definitely a dead body. But they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I literally stood there trying to figure out if a dead body constituted an emergency, so I could circumvent the 48-hour rule of entering an apartment. The police told me that without something else, they couldn't just start running into apartments. We walked up and down the halls and could not figure out where the smell of the dead body was coming from. I went to my office to print up 48-hour notices of intent to enter. I lay in bed that night and started thinking about it. The smell of a dead body only entered the hallway when the door was opened. Someone had the smell of a dead body and opened a door. Day of inspection. I went apartment to apartment. 10 apartments in, a white-haired middle-aged dude answered the door. Huge wafts of bleach belched out of his apartment, instead of hanging out like most people would do when someone is inspecting their apartment. He took off. The floor had been bleached, the kitchen had been bleached. Everything was spotless. Neighbors later said that he told people that chicken went bad. Chicken does not smell like human. I contacted the non-emergency line that day, and without anything else to go on, there wasn't a lot they could do. So middle-aged, nondescript white dude on the 4th floor. Let's not meet.